This episode of The Startup Life is tucked in nice and tight by Philip Stein and the Philip Stein Sleep Bracelet. Startup Nation, getting quality sleep is super important, especially for those of us as entrepreneurs. I know for me, if I don't get enough quality sleep, not only do I not perform well while working in my business or exercising, but also it really affects my mental health and that doubt starts to creep in. And that's the last thing we want as entrepreneurs. Also, with everything going on, good quality sleep is important to repair the body and support a good immune system. And that is why, Startup Nation, I wear the Philip Stein Sleep Bracelet. The Philip Stein Sleep Bracelet uses natural frequency technology to reinforce our biomagnetic field to improve deep sleep, length of sleep, and overall sleep quality. This helps produce a healthier heart, regulate weight control, and helps strengthen the immune system, which helps destroy bacteria and viruses. Right now, when you go to philipstein.com, use code SLEEPEZ and you will get 10% off the entire store. That's promo code SLEEP, capital E, capital Z. So if you are ready to be more productive in leading your business, go with the Philip Stein Sleep Bracelet, proven to be natural and safe to give you a better, deeper sleep.
It's time to be about that life, the startup life. Here's your host, Dominic Lawson.
All right, Startup Nation, so I hope you're ready to receive some value today. My name is Dominic Lawson, and this is The Startup Life, the show for entrepreneurs and career-minded professionals. You know, Startup Nation, over the past 15 years or so, social media has become heavily integrated in our day-to-day lives. Honestly, whether you're on it or not, from the way we shop, engage others, even being part of the political process. But as this medium continues to expand and evolve, how do we expand and evolve with it? Well, today's guest may have a few answers to help us out with that. He is an award-winning professor of management, IT, marketing, and data science at MIT. In addition to being an entrepreneur and venture capitalist, he is also one of the world's leading experts on social media. Why he's on the show today? Because he is also the author of The Hype Machine: How Social Media Disrupts Our Elections, Our Economy, and Our Health, and How We Must Adapt. He is Sinan Aral. Sinan, how are you, good sir?
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Dominic. I appreciate it.
No worries. Definitely looking forward to talking to you today. We can definitely use your help, man. Are you ready to pour some knowledge in the Startup Nation? Because we can use it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a perfect audience.
I hear that. So before we kind of dive into what you do in the book, just kind of share your origin story a little bit, if you don't mind, good sir.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a professor, obviously, at MIT. I like to say I'm a scientist, entrepreneur, and investor in that order.
I hear that.
So as I've been working through my scientific career, I saw several opportunities to commercialize my science in a couple of companies, which I built and sold prior to becoming a venture capitalist and starting a growth stage investment company, which now invests in these types of companies. And really, the engine of all of this activity comes from the ideas generated by the science. So we work on machine learning and artificial intelligence as it applies to marketing technology and enterprise performance. We practice that in the marketplace by building companies and investing in them. And we do the scientific research that's published in peer-reviewed journals that drives the innovation that fuels the marketplace ideas.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing all of that for sure. Kind of walk me through, a day in your classroom a little bit, if you don't mind, Sinan. Like, what's that experience like for you?
Well, the before the coronavirus pandemic, it's a completely different situation, right? I mean, as all of us are dealing with this tremendous disruption in our lives, the concept of the classroom has evolved so much. So before COVID, I teach a class at MIT called Digital Marketing and Social Media Analytics. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the most heavily subscribed classes at the MIT Business School, the Sloan School of Management. And I love to have a lot of engagement and interactivity. And so I tend to let in a few more people than would be allowed by the fire marshal. Don't let that spread too widely. And so,
Sorry, go ahead.
So generally we have a lot of people who show up, and a lot of people are even kind of like sitting in the rafters and sure. in the sort of pathways between the seats and so on. And
Right.
it becomes a really engaged conversation. And the reason why is because, I've had many decades now of experience in the marketplace,
Right.
putting these ideas to the test. And so people want to hear about, this company or that company, or how I work with Facebook or WeChat or Instagram or LinkedIn, and I work with all of them. And then we hear their experience in business, getting their MBAs. They have a lot of work experience. So it really turns into a chat about, the practice of digital marketing, and where is the rigor, and how can we make it work better, and how do we maximize ROI, and how do we get to sustainable recurring revenue, and what it takes to really build an organization that's built on data and analytics and rigor.
For sure. Once again, Startup Nation, we're talking to Sinan Aral, the author of The Hype Machine. So if you would, Sinan, just kind of talk about, kind of like the evolution of not necessarily just social media, but like digital marketing as a whole, as opposed to, like when we're talking about the mid to late 90s, it's a far cry difference from what it is now. Kind of talk about that evolution a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the book, I describe this notion of the 4 decades of consumer engagement, which was really kind of sparked in my mind by conversations with Rob Kane, who's the former CIO of Coca-Cola. And, he describes kind of these 4 decades. In the 80s, it was this concept of a single message. You put a lot of money into a single message, like think about a Super Bowl ad, and you would sort of serve that to the entire population. For 30-second spot, everybody sees the same message. In the 1990s, we started to think, well, maybe everybody in the marketplace isn't the same, and maybe 18 to 24-year-old gamers aren't the same as soccer moms, and I can maybe have slightly different messages for slightly different groups. In about the year 2000, with the advent of the internet, we were able to not only individually target message to specific people, but we had a lot of history about their demographics, their browsing behaviors, their purchasing history, and that allowed us to really tailor messages, customize, personalized messages to the individual. And then round about the year 2000, it really became the decade of the socially linked consumer, where now the consumer is really embedded in these digital networks of word of mouth, ratings, reviews, user-generated content, Facebook, Instagram, and social, and really their worldview, whether it's reading politics information on the news feed of Facebook, or whether it's brand names, or whether it's reviews of products, specific products they want to think about buying. Their world, their information ecosystem is really a digital network of peers and the crowd that's informing their perceptions of brands. So the way I like to tell my students at MIT is that if you're still thinking about market segmentation, you're about 3 decades behind.
Wow.
And I sort of like let that sink in for them, and they sort of take a minute to really take a deep breath and think about that and realize how much has happened since the 1990s through the era of kind of internet personalization, and now into the what I call the new social age in my book is a completely different world of the way the consumer experiences reality, and therefore how we engage with consumers.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm just always amazed at how, powerful, social media has become, digital marketing has become in that regard, because, you even talk about in your book how a tweet can like really affect a company's, share price. A tweet can really affect, or a Facebook post can really affect somebody's political prospects and stuff like that. Did anybody ever say, or did you ever see social media becoming so big to have that much power?
Well, I don't think anybody saw how incredibly transformative it would be. Right. I don't think anybody saw how quickly it would rise, right, which is one of the really dramatic things that we've experienced in the last decade. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I tell multiple stories in the book about, for instance, a false tweet in 2013 which claimed that Barack Obama had been injured in 2 explosions in the White House. It was actually Syrian hackers had hacked the AP News Twitter handle.
Right.
They put out this single false tweet, and the stock market dropped by $140 billion in a matter of minutes. And that's one tweet.
Right.
Pepsi experienced a very similar thing when Indra Nooyi, who was their former CEO, said in a New York Times interview something along the lines of, well, I voted for Clinton. I congratulate President Trump on his victory. But, we need to heal and mend these 2 camps and come together as a country. And then some people, tweeted or posted on Facebook that she had said that supporters of Donald Trump aren't welcome at Pepsi. And Pepsi's brand reputation took the greatest hit that it had all year, even greater than 3 or 4 quarters of bad financial results. So the information that spreads on social media can have dramatic consequences for businesses, for reputations, for politicians, for our democracy, and all of that is explained in the book.
Absolutely. No, thank you for sharing that. That always amazes me. It's like, it's almost like social media in a lot of regards has revealed kind of something that was always there. And what I mean is like 2 people can look at the same thing, whether it be, true or, untrue. They can look at the same thing and have 2 wildly different perspectives on it. You know what I mean? And you kind of talk about that in your book.
Absolutely. So there's a entire chapter 2 of the book is called The End of Reality,
right?
Which is this notion of, how this bifurcation or the splitting up of different parts of human society into micro-targetable communities that see completely different sets of information and what that means for what reality really is. We don't experience the same reality anymore. It used to be that we all got our news from the same TV stations, but now we all experience these very splintered versions of reality. And in addition, I describe all of the algorithms of the hype machine, from friend suggestion algorithms to newsfeed algorithms, and how they target smaller and smaller groups of people with different types of messages and different types of information, all the way through to this notion of deep fakes, right? The ability to create fraudulent audio and video that looks incredibly real. And if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then it can really distort our view of reality entirely.
Gotcha. I'm so glad you brought that up. Deep fakes concern me greatly. I promise they do, because you can just put like somebody's face on some other person's body and like have them like literally, and you said distort audio as well, and just have them honestly say almost anything. And without, any kind of due diligence, if you will, you can have a political figure say something they never even said, and people will run with it. That's so concerning to me. So that brings up another question. Like, talk about some of the responsibilities, even at a micro level, even some, people who aren't influencers and stuff like that. Is there a certain level of responsibility on social media, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think that what happened, social media was born of great promise, right? So at the beginning, it was kind of like it's going to connect the world. It was going to provide life-saving health information. It was going to enable small and medium-sized businesses to get online and to connect directly to consumers. And it was going to, raise money. Facebook raised $250 million for ALS research in 8 weeks. I mean, when you sit there and think for a minute about that, when Nepal had the greatest earthquake that it had had in 100 years, the U.S. and European Union devoted a certain amount of money to disaster relief, and Facebook surpassed the U.S. and Europe combined.
That's crazy.
In the disaster relief that it could generate. 770,000 people donated to that with just a few clicks. So it has a tremendous amount of power, but at the same time, it holds a lot of potential for peril, as we've seen for our democracies and for our economies, and even during the pandemic for misinformation about coronavirus and so on. And so in the book, I describe a lot of responsibilities on the platforms. They need to design and think about society and societal values as they evolve their platforms over time. A lot of the responsibility lies with policymakers. We need to regulate social media in a way that preserves the independence of the marketplace and competition and free speech, but also limits some of the dramatic harms that can be done by social media. But we as ordinary citizens sometimes forget our responsibility in all of this, which is to use social media responsibly. So for instance, fake news, right? Just can't tell you it's a big one. And I can't tell you the number of times I see fake news come across my social media with the preamble that says, I don't know if this is true, but it's really interesting if it is, right? Y'all got to just stop doing that. Like that alone. If people would just stop before they believed or shared the information and did a simple Google search, I think about 80% of the fake news memes can be debunked in a few clicks with a few searches on Google to see, is this true, before you believe it or share it. For sure. And also just kind of we've shown, and my colleagues at MIT have shown in research, that just thinking critically, being reflective on information before you believe or share it is important. So for instance, looking at the source of the information. Frequently there are a lot of URLs that are trying to look legitimate, but are clearly not when you kind of look at the URL, or they're using a lot of all caps, or there's misspellings, just dead giveaways for stuff that isn't legitimate, that if we just thought for a minute, it would go a long way to stopping the spread of falsity.
Absolutely. No, I definitely agree with you there. I say all the time, cross-referencing is your friend. Like when you do that Google search and if you see multiple outlets kind of report it, then there may be some truth to it or something like that. But no, I definitely agree with you and appreciate your content there for sure, Sinan. I want to ask you this, because a lot of times, we have things on social media where you don't really say like, wow, I didn't think that would work. And one of those things when it comes to business is Wendy's. We know how Wendy's likes to get on Twitter from time to time and make fun of people, and people absolutely enjoy it. So I want to ask you this, because they're usually like poking fun at the person who's tweeting at them. So I want to ask you this: why is something like a Wendy's campaign, when they're making fun of potential customers, such a hit with those same customers? What is something that you teach your class from stuff like that?
Well, it's funny you say that, because what we live in now is an attention economy, right? So
that was my next question.
Yeah, and the reason that Wendy's is successful is because it's engaging, it's funny, or it's something that inspires me to pay attention. Oh my God, like if it kind of makes me laugh, if it teaches me something, if it's wholesome, if it it encourages me to do things that improve my life, then it's going to get my attention. And that providing value, whether it's through humor or through good advice or through, tips to improve, yourself or your marketing or your business or whatever it is that you're providing, if that's valuable, then you will garner people's attention. And when you garner people's attention, then you can really engage them. And I think that, I think people, the sort of stuffy days of corporate messaging are over. Today, we want a little bit more reality. We want people to be kind of like relaxed in themselves. We want people to be relatable. We want brands to be relatable and funny, and we appreciate that. The other one that comes to my mind are those Old Spice commercials, which got so much, play just because they were hilarious, and they were one of the first brands to try to just be funny with their commercials. And so that's a good example as well.
For sure. And Startup Nation, I want to read a quick quote from the book to kind of double down on what Sinan just said. And it's from the part of the book that talks about the attentional economy. It says, a quote, "Attention is valuable because it's a precursor to persuasion," end quote. Because I know a lot of people, Sinan, who are listeners of the show, they want to be influencers. They want to be have that persuasion to kind of translate to dollars or ads or whatever the case may be. Kind of talk to that a little bit. Talk about kind of the monetization of that persuasion a little bit.
So I was watching an Instagram video the other day. I can't remember who it was, but it was a motivational speaker was speaking to an audience member, a sort of young entrepreneur, and he said, "Okay, I'll give you a shot. Like go ahead and sell me." It reminds me of the Glengarry Glen Ross movie,
Right.
Where Al Pacino is saying, "You always got to be selling,"
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, "All right, well, here's your shot. Sell me." Or what was that movie where he goes, "Sell me this pencil," The Wolf of Wall Street.
Gotcha.
He's like, sell me this pen, right? So he gave this basically this young 20-something entrepreneur the opportunity. And so he starts into his pitch and he says, "I'm so-and-so, I want to talk to you, I'm from this university," and so on. And the guy goes, "Okay, you got my attention." And then that was it. He didn't have anything to say after that.
Right.
And the point of the chapter is that first you have to get their attention, but the point of the attention is that provides an opportunity to then come with what is it that you're trying to do?
Right.
Like, are you trying to build a business? Are you trying to hire me? Are you trying to sell me something? What's the value proposition of that? And so the attention economy is about getting people's attention and engagement, but then following through with a call to action or some sort of engaging conversation that changes their behavior. And since information is exploding in this economy, we're bombarded by more and more information every single day. Herbert Simon, the Nobel Prize winning economist, likes to say that information consumes attention. Mm-hmm. And so the more information there is, the greater the scarcity of attention. So first, you have to struggle to get people's attention. Once you have people's attention, then you can't just be caught flat-footed with nothing to say. You got to have what it is you wanted their attention for on the ready so that you can then engage them in a conversation that moves them forward.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you this, and speaking of, attention and stuff like that, because one of the biggest attention getters on social media is Gary Vee, and you kind of talk about him a little bit in the book. Kind of share that a little bit.
Yeah, Gary Vee, when I first started looking at some of his content, I was like, wow, I mean, this is a little bit kind of sales pitchy. It's very kind of travel circus oriented. Gotcha. He had a lot of his best-selling books have these titles like Jab Jab Right Hook or Crush It, and he's got cartoons, and he's got his picture of his smiling face next to a turd, or he's got these weird kind of like things that he likes to do and say, and I don't agree with him on a lot of stuff. But what I started to realize once I got deeper and deeper into his content was that eventually he had me. And what I mean by that is he had the one thing that he was after the entire time, which was my attention. And as I started to kind of get into his content, I realized that he was incredibly deep on the basic workings and strategy of the attention economy. And that was the entire key to VaynerMedia, because he was able to convince sports stars, musicians, and people that he represents as a marketing agency,
right,
that he knew how to arbitrage between differently priced attention, how to get attention, how to turn that attention into persuasion, and how to operate in the attention economy. And by, really consuming his content with an open mind, he kind of changed my opinion dramatically. And now I think that he really understands this economy incredibly well.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that, for sure. I want to ask you this because, we're talking about monetizing social media and stuff like that. And now you're starting to see a platform like a OnlyFans, where you can kind of get that money, almost instantaneously. I saw an article just today, where there's a young lady who quit her optician job, cause she's making $10,000 a month, on OnlyFans, just doing like kinky puppy videos or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like, where do you think you see social media? What's that next phase of it all, if in your opinion?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I actually cover this in detail in the book, the whole
Mhm.
influencer economy, how influencers work, the science behind it all.
Yeah.
I think that right now what we're seeing is kind of a wild, wild west of
Right.
influencers. We're seeing tinkerers, people who are just trying new things out, willing to fail, willing to take risks, and some things catch on really well. We obviously see reports of the ones that succeed, but there are lots who fail trying to do different
Absolutely.
types of things. And so I think what's going to happen there is there's going to be some analytical rigor put to it. You're going to see agencies that start to measure the effectiveness of different types of influencers. You're going to see specialization. So I think that a lot of the influencers that succeed specialize in certain types of content. They build a community around a specific type of content. And then, a lot of what we see now is that the micro influencers a portfolio of micro influencers is more influential for a brand than a single celebrity, because Kim Kardashian charges $500,000 for an Instagram post.
Right.
And that's cost prohibitive. But if you have a portfolio of influencers that have between 1,000 and 15,000 followers each, you can probably get more engagement by working through that portfolio of influencers than you can by spending $500,000 on an Instagram post by Kim Kardashian. We see, for instance, that the engagement rates are inversely proportional to the size of the audience. So the amount of engagement per post is higher for smaller niche influencers than for celebrities. Celebrities have a big audience, but they don't have as much engagement per head as a micro influencer would.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's major. And Startup Nation, I hope you caught that, because I think a lot of times people, because we have a lot of podcasters, and I'm in a lot of podcasting groups, and it's like, oh, I need to get 15,000 followers. I need to get 20,000 followers. I need to get 50,000 followers of the show. But you kind of just shared a game plan that's kind of counter to that. And so I think you just gave a lot of hope to a lot of micro influencers, especially like ones like myself. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, I think, for micro influencers, my big recommendation to them would be focus on engagement. Obviously, building your audience is important,
right?
But, respond to every comment. Start a conversation with each individual audience member. If you give them value, they'll talk about you to their friends, and you'll build your audience that way. But if you don't give them value, you're going to lose them. And that's a big waste of effort and energy on your part. I also think that being selective and creating kind of a niche, narrow subject matter for your content is also probably a good strategy and just be authentic. I think that authenticity goes a long way, and we see that authenticity is what drives engagement, even if shock and awe is what drives audience.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. I want to ask one last question before we kind of transition a little bit, if I could, Sinan, because we talk about the power of social media and building a brand and building a business, but we also are seeing that it can be a tool for social justice in that regard. Even from a few years ago, from the Arab Spring and stuff like that, and now Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. Kind of share some insight there, if you would, some commentary, if you would, about using social media to kind of affect change, if you will.
Yeah, there have been social movements, obviously, before social media, but social media is an accelerant and an enabler of social movements like we've never seen.
Right.
And the reason why that's true is it enables two things. First, it enables a signal of solidarity. So you can signal through a lens over your profile photo that supports Black Lives Matter, or tweets, or comments and so on, that you are part of the movement. And then it coordinates action. So through this decentralized real-time information system, you can organize marches. You can organize people to get out into Tahrir Square or to, whatever square is in your neighborhood. And so those two things in combination have never existed at the scale that we see on social media. And this actually goes back to what in economics and sociology and philosophy has been written about for centuries, really, as the collective action problem. And that's a problem where any one individual's behavior is by itself meaningless. And only when you sort of combine all of the actions of a large group of people does it have meaning. So great examples would be climate change.
Right.
Of course, your individual carbon footprint is not going to make a meaningful difference for climate change in the world. But if a large enough group each does a small set of things, then it makes a meaningful difference. Democracy, another perfect example, voting. No one vote matters, but all of the votes together matters a lot. And so this is the collective action problem, because it doesn't seem like there should be an incentive for any one individual to act, but when we all act in concert, it can move mountains. And social media helps us accelerate and enable that kind of social movement or overcome the collective action problem by signaling commitment and coordinating action.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask that because it seems like social media is now these days is kind of like how TV was in the 60s during the civil rights movement. It's like there's one thing to say, oh, there's unrest going on in the South, but when you see images of certain things, then it's almost, there's no denying it. And so with social media, it just seems like it just spreads like wildfire now. So I appreciate you sharing your commentary and insight on that, Sinan, for sure.
Well, another thing about that I think is really, really important is that one thing that we see in the research on social media enabled social movements is that they rise really fast, but frequently they don't have the time. They don't have the time to develop an organization, stay in power, a set of demands, right? So they're powerful but fragile. And compared to like the movements of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. or Gandhi in India, which happened over many years and developed an organization, had demands, they may not have staying power. But I actually sat next to DeRay McKesson on a plane once, and I had a long conversation with him. And that dude is incredibly deep, both on the sort of blocking and tackling of organizing, but also on this need to just be deep on the policy issues and to have a specific set of well thought out principles and sort of objectives for action that make a good social movement. And I'll say this, it goes right back to the notion of attention and persuasion, right? You can get somebody's attention, but then what are you going to persuade them to do? The analogy to social movements is they rise fast, they get the world's attention, then the whole world turns to them and says, what do you want? And then the response has to be well-reasoned. It has to be a set of demands and organization that has staying power and that has can create real meaningful and lasting change.
For sure. No, that's definitely important. I appreciate you pointing that out. All right, Startup Nation. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We got to pay some bills. Once again, my name is Dominic Lawson, and you're listening to The Startup Life. This fresh coat of the Startup Life has been sprayed on nice and smooth by Wagner and the Flexo series of paint sprayers. Startup Nation, my wife decided she wanted to rehab her childhood home. The goal was to fix it up and invite a nice family to rent it out. We knew one of the biggest jobs we had to undertake was painting. However, from the walls, the cabinets, and even the siding outside, it was going to be a big task. As entrepreneurs with a company to run, we knew this was going to take up a lot of our time, which is why we decided to get a paint sprayer. And after much research, we decided to go with the sprayer from the Flexio series from Wagner. Startup Nation, these sprayers are top-notch because of its flexibility to paint or stain walls, furniture, cabinets, and more. It's 10 times faster than using a paintbrush which was a big selling point for us. And you can paint or stain right from the can. It's also easy to clean in 5 minutes, and being great for indoor and outdoor projects, a paint sprayer from the Flexio series clearly needs to be part of the arsenal in your garage. So if you're ready to stain your deck, or like me, fill your daughter's request of a bubblegum pink room, up your game with a paint sprayer from the Flexio series by Wagner. Take it from me, your time will thank you. This episode is sponsored by Swanson Health. Startup Nation, Swanson Health has been producing quality vitamins and supplements, foods, healthy home, and self-care products for over 50 years. Since 1969, from the heart of America, Swanson Health carries over 20,000 wellness products at a great value. Pick up all of your favorite health products, plus discover new ones for your wellness routine, all while leaving money in your pocket. If you want to try any of Swanson Health's great products for yourself, use code STARTUP20 for 20% off at swanson.com. We have a link there in the show notes if you listen to the replay. This episode of The Startup Life is powered by Colony Spark. Startup Nation, with our economy in flux, there is a lot of mixed messaging out there. If there was ever a time to take control of the narrative and let your customers know that you're here to serve them, it's now. And that's why you have a friend in Colony Spark. Colony Spark is an omni-channel marketing agency that believes in the power of community to ignite your business. They have helped companies across many industries with lead generation, revenue growth, and more to put them on the path to success. My guy Bill Murphy and his team are very good at what they do. How do I know this? Because not many SEO companies have the stamp of approval of being partnered with Google. Yes, that Google. So I want you to go to www.colonyspark.com/startup to schedule a meeting today. In that meeting, you will review your current marketing activity, receive actionable advice on how to pivot and grow, and ask any marketing questions you may have on navigating over the next few months. Look, Startup Nation, I know things may seem uncertain right now, but if you are looking for a business partner that can help light the way, go with Colony Spark, where they firmly believe in business helping business. All right, Startup Nation, welcome back as we continue our conversation with today's guest here on The Startup Life. Once again, Startup Nation, the book is The Hype Machine, How Social Media Disrupts Our Elections, Our Economy, and Our Health, and How We Must Adapt. And Startup Nation, that book is available today. You can look at the link in the show notes if you're listening to the replay on the podcast. I want to shift gears here a little bit because you're also the founding partner of Manifest Investment Partners. You're the founding partner there. Kind of talk about your goal and your strategy when it comes to pouring capital into certain companies and businesses, and what's the goal there?
Yeah, so I co-founded this company with my longtime friend and business partner, Paul Falzoni, back in 2016. And we had just finished. He had just finished selling his last company. I had just finished selling my last company.
Right.
And we decided we wanted to work together. We had a network of people who had supported our startups in the past. And so they decided, and we decided, that a good idea would be to help entrepreneurs to realize their visions with a big fund, a growth stage fund, because we had operational experience. Between us, we have 5 exits under our belt prior to the venture capital firm, and we built Manifest with a very simple founding philosophy, which is that we're not just providers of money; we're providers of strategic support and insight based on our years of experience building and selling companies. And that's what kind of differentiates us in the marketplace from most traditional venture capital firms, which are focused on a portfolio approach. Sometimes you see venture capital firms pursue what is sometimes called a spray and pray strategy, where they essentially put a bunch of money into many, 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 many different companies, and they hope that some small fraction of them really hit it big to make up for all of the losses on the ones that fail. That's not our strategy. Our strategy is we look for businesses with seasoned entrepreneurs that have good ideas and product traction in the marketplace. And then we expect all of our companies to succeed. And what I mean by that is we work hand in hand as an extension of the CXO suite to try to really bring the vision of those entrepreneurs to a successful reality in the marketplace. And And so we work very hard. We don't just give them money and walk away. We help them as much as we possibly can with our prior experience to make them successful.
I appreciate that, Sinan. Thank you for sharing that answer. I appreciate that because I think a lot of times, entrepreneurs who are seeking funding or from an angel investor, venture capitalists and stuff like that, I think far too often they see the purse strings as the main value. In actuality, it's the experience, it's insight, it's the know-how. Sometimes it's the Rolodex.
I think that's such an important point. It really, really is true. If you're an entrepreneur and you're raising money, you should ask the potential investor, what their involvement is going to be. What are they going to contribute beyond just the money? Because the money that one investor will give you is identical to the money that another investor will give you, conditional on the terms of the agreement. The thing that's different is the smarts and the expertise and the strategic insight and the advice and the Rolodex and the et cetera that they have to bring to bear on your company. And so those things in the end up being way more valuable than the money itself. That kind of strategic advice is sometimes very difficult to replicate.
I just think that's really important. And I hope, Startup Nation, I really hope you caught that. But in that same vein, I think it's also important for you as the investor to, make sure you're making a sound investment. So I guess I'm curious, when it comes to, you kind of talked about this a little bit. I want to go a little bit deeper. When it comes to are you looking for a great pitch deck? Are you looking at the person? Are you looking at the idea? I guess, what are some of those indicators that make you decide, we're going to go in this direction as opposed to this direction?
Yeah, just quick three things about that,
Sure.
Which, I have so many thoughts on that. And I think that is something that I kind of think about a lot.
Okay.
First of all, the entrepreneurs themselves matter a ton, perhaps even more than the product or the idea or anything like that. Because in any business, a business and an entrepreneur are going to pivot. They're going to need to adapt to changes in their experience of the marketplace. They're going to need to change their business, et cetera. We have to believe in the entrepreneur. We have to believe in the entrepreneur has to not only be smart, dedicated, hardworking, collaborative with their team, able to build a good team and motivate their team. They need to be humble. They need to understand the concept of learning from others instead of just thinking they know it all. They need to be able to communicate their ideas well. They need to be all of these things at once. So we really spend a lot of time getting to know the entrepreneurs. And I'd say the people involved, the founders involved in the company are such a crucial part of the success of any startup. Secondly, I think that obviously we really look in detail under the hood of the idea, and really it takes us a long time to have enough conversations with a new startup to really get their sense of the company, the product, what they're trying to do, how they respond to different types of questions about their business plan, the way that they would approach the market if things changed in this direction or that direction.
Right.
And so we really get into the nuts and bolts of the business. And as an example, we invest a lot in machine learning and artificial intelligence and algorithms and data science and so on.
Right.
And so, a lot of venture capital firms will outsource the due diligence of that to some third party. But when it comes to us, what we do is they say, okay, let's set up a meeting and we'll walk you through our tech. Just put us in touch with your whoever you want us to do the due diligence with. Mm-hmm. And I always say, no, that's me. You can just open your laptop and show it to me right now.
Right.
They're kind of taken aback by that. They're like, oh, wait a minute. I thought you were the venture capitalists. And I'm like, well, I was also the chief scientist of all the companies that I've built and sold. So I understand the algorithms. I have a PhD from MIT. I can look at that stuff. The nuts and bolts are absolutely essential. So
sure.
What's going on under the hood of the company is important, but also, the entrepreneurs, their basic character, the ethics of the people, the their collaborative possibilities, their ability to adapt, their commitment to their ideas, the amount of hard work that they're willing to do, their openness, their humbleness, all of that matters a ton. Honestly, maybe 75% entrepreneur, 25% idea when I'm thinking about investments.
I heard that. Thank you for sharing that for sure. And speaking of, kind of like looking at talent, entrepreneurial talent and stuff like that. I was looking on your Instagram feed just now, and that's at Professor Sinan. If you're curious about that startup nation, we have a link there in the show notes for easy access where you can follow him on Instagram. And you shared a picture of Kobe Bryant. And I know before he passed away, he was starting to build this nice business portfolio and stuff like that. I want to ask you this. If you were to take his mindset as he approached the game of basketball and translate it over to the world of business, how successful do you think Kobe would have been in the business world, in your opinion?
Well, I think that it's no surprise, right, that the people who succeed in athletics at that level, like a Kobe or a Michael Jordan or a LeBron James, they are unbelievably dedicated, right? The Mamba mentality,
Absolutely.
right? That Kobe always espoused. They are unbelievably dedicated. I remember, growing up, Michael Jordan was my favorite basketball player. I will have a debate to this day with anyone who questions whether he is and will always be the greatest basketball player of all time.
Gotcha.
And the reason for that is because, 6 championships are, tough to shake a finger at. LeBron is making a run.
Right.
Kobe made a run. But that guy, even in his prime, after winning 5 championships, was the first one in the gym, the last one to leave, the one working hardest in practice, the one taking shot after shot after shot. Kobe was very similar. He obviously learned from Michael. He considered Michael Jordan a mentor,
right,
in that way. And so, I'm always impressed by the commitment of big time athletes, the real superstars, how much they work and that dedication to their craft, the not 3 extra reps, but 300, 3,000, right, 30,000 extra reps just to get it perfect, just to make it muscle memory. It's an incredibly deep commitment. The picture I posted, however, was really something about the balance that a lot of these athletes show. LeBron James, another perfect example. This guy is so dedicated to his family. Right. He is so dedicated to causes, to the right ideas being pushed in society, obviously Black Lives Matter and inequality and so on. But the picture I posted, for those of you who want to follow me on Instagram, was actually a picture of Kobe during a game getting a backwards high five from his daughter while he is in a game. And it just shows that even in the middle of this intense professional physical activity that he's going through, he's got his mind balanced between his responsibilities as a father and his responsibilities as a professional athlete. He is not so singularly focused that he forgets his holistic self in the world. And I think that's really important.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. And speaking of finding that balance and being dedicated to your craft and stuff like that, and you've had all this amazing success, tell me about your son a little bit. I know you have a new hobby of kind of learning from him these days.
Yeah.
Kind of talk to me about your son a little bit.
Yeah, that is possibly the most humbling experience of my life. So my son he's 7 years old. He is an unbelievable kid. He's the thing I'm most proud of him for is how kind and empathetic he is with the people around him, both his friends and the adults around him. He can have a conversation with people of any age, and he's very bright. He reads a lot and so on. The other day I went hiking with him and one of his friends and his friend's father. and we were having lunch by a lake, and the other friend, I'm not going to name names, was like, oh, I just want to be a superstar. I want to earn a lot of money, and I want to get rich. And my 7-year-old son stopped in the middle of his PB&J, and he said, I don't really care about money. Money is just a means to an end. What matters is being happy and giving back to the world. And I was like, is this really coming out of a 7-year-old's mouth? This is unbelievable.
For a 7-year-old.
Right. And so that's what I mean when I say I learn from him every day. He really makes me stop and reflect about what's important in the world. Just looking at him makes me think about, what should our legacy as parents be? How should we leave this world for the next generation? And keeping that front and center in your mind is probably a good idea as you kind of accomplish things in the world.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing all of that for sure. I want to ask you this because, like I said, you're a dad, and I saw in my prep that you enjoy cooking, skiing, and telling jokes, but you also, telling jokes about your cooking and skiing. My apologies. I read that. So since you're a dad and you like telling jokes, do you have a good dad joke today?
Well, I have a lot of good dad jokes.
Lay them on us, brother.
Well, I got one. I got one that actually a friend of mine told me about. He saw a T-shirt, and it was a guy. It was a Venn diagram, and these two concentric circles that overlap just in the middle. And one of the circles said, jokes, and the other circle said dads, and then there was an arrow pointing to the middle, and it said, "This is where the magic happens." That's my best dad joke.
Gotcha. Fair enough. Thank you for sharing that. Once again, Startup Nation, we're wrapping up with Sinan Aral, the author, The Hype Machine, How Social Media Disrupts Our Elections, Our Economy, and Our Health, and How We Must Adapt. Once again, Startup Nation, that book is available today. If you look on the link in the show notes, if you're listening on the replay or the podcast, and if you're on radio, you can get that on any of your favorite bookstores online for sure. So I'm actually going to turn the microphone over to you, Sinan, because given everything that's going on, people are feeling a little discouraged, feeling a little kind of down a little bit. Kind of give us some words of encouragement to take us out for the day, if you would, good sir.
Yeah, at any sort of moment of disruption is also a moment of tremendous opportunity. When you shake things up, new doors open and things are available that they may not have been available before. Right now is a tough moment. I mean, we can't kind of sugarcoat the health and economic devastation that we've all experienced, the emotional trauma that we go through by being so separated from our friends and our family at great distance, being stuck, sheltering in place and not being able to do the things that we want to do. But that will end. And as it ends, you'll see a new disrupted world that's full of new opportunities because society and life is different. So it's going to require different approaches, different businesses, different voices, different, energies in the world. And, I just think that we should all be committed to pouring our energy into trying to make the world a better place, adding value to society and to the world. I think if we do that, we'll really get a lot back in return. I direct the MIT initiative on the digital economy, as you described earlier. And when COVID hit, I took our team and I said, listen, we need to fight this thing head on. So we spun up 4 or 5 massive projects on addressing and fighting the COVID pandemic. We've published research with the World Health Organization and with Facebook about measuring the trajectory of the virus, and we're surveying people around the world in collaboration with Facebook and the World Health Organization, trying to understand things like vaccine confidence and how governors in the United States need to be coordinating with each other in order to really stop the pandemic. And so, I think always find an opportunity to give back to society, because that really enriches you and enriches the world too.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm starting to see where your son gets that from, for sure. And that's going to wrap up this session of The Startup Life. We want to thank Sinan Aral for coming on the show. Thank you so much, good sir.
Really appreciate you.
No worries.
I do. I just wanted to mention the 3 things, which is the website.
Sure, absolutely. Yes.
The things you're going to link to, the website, the Twitter handle, the @Sinan Aral,
okay,
and then the @Professor Sinan on Instagram.
Gotcha.
That would be really helpful.
Oh, no, for sure. And Startup Nation, all those 3 things are there in the show notes for easy access. And as always, Startup Nation, if you have an idea, be about that life, the startup life. If you want to let us know what you think about our show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on our show, send us a message on the Startup Life Podcast Facebook page. And while you are there, like and follow our page as well. It's a great way for us to engage with you, Startup Nation, and really grow our community. The link is there in the show notes. Subscribe to the show, as it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or even on your Facebook timeline or any other platform you like to get your podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you find our content valuable, please give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us climb the charts and help more people find our show. You can also listen to the show on the Startup Life Podcast new website. There you will find the all-new startup blog, where I write on many topics that are interesting and helpful to you on your path to entrepreneurship. And hey, if you have an idea, be about that life, the startup life.